baby slept between a wet chicken and his snoring grandfather, and nobody considered that strange. They called it the Great Bed, yet half the family never touched its worm-eaten boards. Instead, they curled on straw pallets arranged like fallen dominoes around the hearth because one fire had to warm 14 bodies. A medieval hall house was basically a timber box with a chimney hole, so heat leaked faster than gossip. Huddling was central heating before chimneys learned how to behave. You, me, and a dozen cousins? All spooned together beneath a single wool blanket scratchier than a monk's conscience. Praying Father didn't roll over and steal the only warm patch. Children learned the geography of feet before they knew the Lord's Prayer. Ankles, knees, elbows. Every limb became someone else's pillow, and heaven helped the unlucky soul who slept near the door where winter drafts barged in uninvited. Privacy was a foreign concept. Parents conceived the next sibling while the rest of the brood pretended to be very fascinated by the thatch. Courtiers might blush at such rustic frankness, but peasants prioritized survival over decorum. Modesty, like soap, was a luxury. One legal record from York, 1327, complains that the apprentice did strike his master's son with a clog as they lay abed round the hearth. Translation: bedtime brawls were a recognized occupational hazard, because apprentices, servants, and even travelers often earned sleeping rights on the same floor. Proximity bred both intimacy and occasional blunt instrument diplomacy. Yet sharing a room wasn't purely economic. There was safety in numbers. Wolves prowled forests, thieves skulked lanes, and a locked wooden door was softer than any burglar's resolve. Pack the room with bodies, and you create a living alarm system. One sneeze, everyone wakes swinging. Still convinced medieval folk were prudes? Consider the widespread custom of the bundling board, a wooden plank slid between courting youths who shared the family bed. Theoretically, it preserved chastity. Practically, it gave everyone, including giggling siblings at the foot, front-row seats to an awkward tug-of-war with temptation. Of course, they did this because courting in the candlelit barn apparently wasn't embarrassing enough. But wait, it gets weirder. Nobles sometimes hired bed warmers, human ones. A lower-ranking lady would climb beneath the sheets first, absorbing the bed's icy bite, then slide out so her grace could slip in without so much as a shiver. Nothing says privilege like outsourcing your goosebumps. Meanwhile, common villagers relied on livestock. A pig under the pallet was a squealing hot water bottle, generating heat and fleas in equal measure. Yes, you read that correctly. Pigs in blankets was originally a sleeping arrangement, not a snack. Architectural evolution lagged behind social needs. The classic English hall remained one cavernous space well into the 15th century. Only later did half-floors and solar lofts offer parents a meager illusion of solitude. Even then, servants often slept outside the master's door like furry, loyal dogs. Except the dogs were already inside, hogging the ashes. In Scandinavian longhouses, the situation was even snugger. Humans, cattle, and stored hay cohabited under one sod roof, turning every sneeze into a cross-species event. Archaeologists found animal-chewed crib boards. Proof toddlers teethed alongside calves. Why didn't they just build more rooms? Timber cost silver, stone cost gold, and heating extra chambers meant burning forests faster than kings could issue hunting bans. One hearth, one room, one smoky miracle keeping frostbite at bay. It was a pragmatic equation. Besides, the medieval worldview prized communal living. Solitude smelled suspiciously like arrogance, or worse, heresy. Priests warned that idle hands invited the devil, but idle minds were equally risky, and nothing keeps a mind busy like Aunt Agnes's elbow in your ribs all night. If you're picturing endless misery, remember that solidarity forged steel-strong bonds. Storytelling thrived after curfew. With ale-warmed tongues, elders recited sagas while children drifted off under the collective lullaby of creaking beams and crackling logs. Secrets had nowhere to hide, which meant lies died young. When the Black Death hit, whole households quarantined upon the same rush-strewn floor. Grim, yes, yet dying within arm's reach of every loved one was oddly comforting in a world where tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. Inventories of urban homes reveal telling details. A 1402 London will lists un great feather bed, 3 canvas beds, and va coringes for alle, suggesting that extra mattresses lived rolled in the rafters until nightfall turned the floor into a dormitory. Mattresses, stuffed with straw, leaves, or heather, refreshed only when insects staged an uprising. The resulting smell? Imagine a barn, married an ashtray. Still, contemporaries described the arrangement as cozy because comparison shopping wasn't an option, until chimneys, staircases, and finally the Renaissance concept of privacy crashed the slumber party. Enter the late medieval urban middle class, flaunting upper chambers like social media influencers brandishing rooftop pools. Separating sleepers by age, gender, or rank became a status symbol. A guest offered his own cot felt downright royal. Yet vestiges of communal sleep lingered. Even Shakespeare's Globe rented groundlings the right to nap against the stage during long plays. They were accustomed to snoozing upright amid crowds. When you grow up in a human jigsaw puzzle, personal space feels overrated. Medical tracts of the era warned against night vapors, produced by too many bodies exhaling in one chamber, but the advice fell on ears stuffed with wool caps. Physicians also claimed women's menstrual humors could suffocate infants if they shared a bed. Did that prompt separate rooms? Hardly. It merely added another bedtime story to the crackling gossip fire, right alongside demon cats and wandering will-o'-the-wisps. Occasionally, the system backfired spectacularly. Chronicles recount a 1483 inn fire in Ghent, where 30 guests slept wall to wall. One overturned candlestick, and the human domino effect turned lethal. Exit doors blocked by tangled limbs ensured casualties. Town councils responded not with fire escapes, but with curfews on open flames, because obviously the candle was at fault, not the sardine tin floor plan. Yet communal sleep wasn't uniformly oppressive. Lovers carved secret codes onto bedposts. Toddlers learned lullabies from 7 different relatives. Widowed grandfathers found comfort in a grandson's steady breathing. Academic researchers analyzing skeletal remains from medieval cemeteries note lower incidence of loneliness-linked stress markers than in certain modern populations. Apparently, constant proximity buffered emotional isolation long before therapists charged by the hour. When night soil buckets overflowed, no one enjoyed the aroma, but nobody suffered alone. The same goes for midnight terrors. Entire rooms roused to soothe a screaming child or chase away a supposed succubus. Collective vigilance created a safety net. You might be hungry, cold, and flea-ridden, but you were never abandoned. Compare that to today's locked studio apartments, where neighbors barely nod in the hallway. Progress with an asterisk. By the 17th century, double-bay cottages introduced inner partitions. Yet, diaries still describe families gathering in the main room for winter nights, citing the comforté of company. The Industrial Revolution finally scattered sleepers into individual cells, assisted by cheap coal stoves and brick-terraced housing. Privacy, that late bloomer, was sold as virtue, and advertisers pushed personal boudoirs like a moral obligation. Ironically, modern epidemiologists now tout co-sleeping benefits for infant bonding. Trendspotting is just history in a trench coat. So the next time your open-plan loft feels cramped, remember the medieval precedent. They crammed livestock, servants, and an alarming number of relatives into a single smoky room and called it bedtime. Somehow, they emerged with ballads, cathedrals, and the occasional plague, yet also an intimacy we might secretly miss when our silent, climate-controlled bedrooms feel colder than any unglazed window ever did.